So I'm going to show you how I made this shrink plastic Spider-Man with the shrink plastic and Posca paint pens. I have a very special young man in my life, my little nephew, who is obsessed with Spider-Man. So I thought I'd give it a try and make a shrink plastic Spider-Man for him that he can use as like a keychain or like a zipper pull. Spoiler alert, there will be no closure on this spider web thing that I'm showing you here. I haven't finished it yet, but what you do see is I was wiping the back of it off because some of the UV resin was on the back and it wasn't cured, so it was sticky. So if that ever happens when you're crafting, you can use rubbing alcohol, spray it on a paper towel, and just scrub the uncured UV resin off of there so that it's not sticky anymore. So this is the sketch that I did of Spider-Man. So I used just a reference photo that I found, and I tried to make it a decent enough size so that it wasn't too big. If you do shrink plastic too large, when you try to melt it, it will fold over on itself. So I actually learned that the hard way because I was trying to do a different spider web that was bigger, like actually using the whole sheet of shrink plastic, and it folded over on itself into a big mess. So this Spider-Man is about half of the size of the shrink plastic. So the one piece of plastic folded in half, and then the Spider-Man was traced onto the half of it. And the shrink plastic itself is 5.7 by 7.8 inches. So here I am just tracing with a permanent marker. And this is the Posca pen, and these pens are fairly new to me, and it took me a little bit to figure out how to get it working. You have to shake the pen, and then you have to push the tip of it in to get the ink flowing. Now, this is a sped up version, so you might not be able to tell, but I am basically just dotting the red ink in between the lines that I had already drawn, because otherwise the red would have completely covered up all the lines. So I was carefully just dotting it all in so that I didn't cover up the black permanent marker. And then white Posca pen for the eyes, and then blue for the blue part of Spider-Man's uniform. You can see right now that there are some little white spaces in between. And so later in the video, you'll see that I actually flipped Spider-Man over and decided to color the backside with the red Posca pen after Spider-Man was heated up and shrunk. So here I am just cutting out the plastic. And it's good to leave a little bit of space, like 2 or 3 millimeters of space around. And then what you'll see is I am leaving some space at the top also so that I can use a hole punch and punch a hole at the top so that it can be on a keychain. As you can see with the miniature Spider-Man that's on the upper right here next to the drawing, I forgot to punch a hole in that one. So that's why I am making a new Spider-Man. I'm thinking that I might use that mini Spider-Man that I forgot to punch the hole in. I might use that in a silicone mold with some UV resin and just use it as like an inlay. So it actually could be part of like a Christmas ornament. We'll see. I don't know. So here's Spider-Man before I use the heat gun. And people can heat these in the oven. People use a toaster oven to heat these. I I just use a pair of tweezers to kind of hold it still so that it doesn't start blowing around too much. But you have to kind of be gentle or delicate. You don't want to hold the tweezers down too hard on whatever you're trying to shrink, because I have actually seen it kind of put like a hole in the spot where the tweezers were holding it. So you'll notice that I kind of let off a little bit with the tweezers just so that I don't put a hole in it. I have said before that this part is unnerving. I get nervous every time I do shrink plastic when I'm heating it up and it starts moving around, because I'm afraid it's going to fold over on itself and just completely get ruined. And it's a difficult thing to deal with, but you just, bear through it, and usually it turns out fine in the end if your project isn't too big to begin with. And then I'm just pushing, cold metal on the top just to make sure that it is flat. Making sure that it's hard enough. So that's Spider-Man now that he has been heat shrunk. And it looks okay there. And then this is just some Mod Podge that I have seen other people who have done shrink plastic. When they use something to color the shrink plastic, they use Mod Podge or some kind of sealer to seal the color in before putting UV resin. So this is me painting some Mod Podge on there to seal in the color so that I can top coat it with some UV resin. I don't really worry too much about bubbles or about any streaks because the Mod Podge dries clear. So I'm just kind of haphazard with it. Just get it on there, let it dry. And then once it's completely dry, coat it with the UV resin. A couple of safety things to note here as well, which I forgot to mention when I made my other little video about the betta fish pens that I made. Whenever you're doing shrink plastic and you're heating that plastic up, I'm sure it's letting off some kind of hazardous fumes. So it's best to wear a respirator or do it in a very well ventilated area, or both. So in my art room, I actually open the window, turn the fan on, and I wear a respirator. So I have all of that going. And then when you're using UV resin or any type of resin, you should always wear gloves to keep the resin off of your skin. And also you should be using a respirator and doing it in a well-ventilated area also. So this is the backside of Spider-Man, and I am putting the red Posca pen on the backside because there are little holes in the paint since I had to dot it in, as you could see when I lifted it up there. So I decided to paint it in on the backside so that it would look nicer from the front. And then once it's painted from the backside, I let the Posca marker dry. And after it dried, I put a coat of Mod Podge on the back so that I could also coat it with UV resin. It doesn't take very long to dry. I'm a little bit impatient, so it probably felt to me like it was taking forever, but in reality, it doesn't take that long for it to dry. And I had my fan going, so I actually just kind of picked up Spider-Man and held him in front of the fan to help him dry off a little bit so that I could move on to the next step of putting the Mod Podge on. After I did the Posca on the backside and I let it dry, I flipped it over and I could still see that there were some spots that weren't really filled in that well. So this is me carefully trying to fill in the rest of the spots. And then just picking it up and looking at it through different angles kind of helps to see any vacancies in color. Unfortunately, the Posca pens that I have very blunt tips, as you can see. It's like a bullet-shaped tip or something like that. It would be nice to have a collection of Posca pens that have a variety of different tips. They do make finer tipped Posca pens, but this is the ones that I have. It's actually my first time ever having any Posca pens or using any Posca pens. Posca markers, Posca pens, I don't even know what they're called. What do they call them? Look at the box and see. Okay, so here I'm coating Mod Podge on the back side of Spider-Man. The box just says water-based Posca. And then here I'm putting UV resin on with a toothpick. And then letting it cure underneath the UV curing lamp. I set it for 2 minutes or 120 seconds, but I don't even think it takes that long. And then this is me trying to put the little jump ring on so that I could attach Spider-Man to the keychain. So sorry that a lot of that is out of the view of the camera. It's really difficult to use these little tiny jump rings and concentrate on what I'm doing and also try to keep it under the view of the camera. So here you can see I'm shining a UV light on the jump ring because I put a little bit of UV resin with a toothpick on the jump ring and cured it with the UV light. There's Spider-Man. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And maybe you even learned something. Have a great day.